Welcome back. I hope you're ready for chapter 9. We are over halfway through, so that's really exciting, isn't it? Take a moment and pat yourself on the back. Look at all the information you've acquired. Look at how much you've learned, and hopefully it hasn't been too horrible. And now we just got to keep going. Just keep on moving till the end of these chapters. So you've done really great. You want to keep it up. In this week, chapter 9, it is another one that's action-packed. It's filled with a lot of great information. And I am going to be going into a lot of it for two reasons. While it's touched on in other classes, we don't have a class that's focused on this area in your core anyways. The other thing is, one of the most important things to our adjustment and to our overall well-being and our sense of happiness is having close relationships, friendships, social supports, in loving relationships. So it is very imperative that we have those relationships and that we understand those relationships for us to have those supports that we need that helps us adjust and deal with stress. So there'll be a lot of material as I go through this section, so I hope you're ready. The good news is this material is relevant to all of us. So regardless if we're in a romantic relationship or not, regardless of our orientation, regardless of our age, regardless if we've been married 14 times or never been married, we all have some sort of relationship. So, hopefully you can find some material in here that you can pull from that, because whether that be romantic or just a friendship, or whether it be a family relationship, we all have relationships of some point. And if you don't have a relationship of any point, we'll also be addressing loneliness and how to try to combat that. So hopefully there's some good stuff in here for you. We talk about, the chapter starts with attraction, as we talk about friendship and love in this chapter. It talks with attraction, which is the initial desire to form a relationship. So, let's not confuse attraction necessarily with a physical attraction, although it could be, but that we're attracted to that person, that they have a quality that we like. So we find them interesting, we find them pretty, we find them exciting, we find something that they do, a skill that they have, something that I want to learn. So there's something about them that we are drawn to, that we want to learn more about them. Again, whether romantically or even in a friendship. And so those are the things that typically will draw people together. There's a couple of other factors. We like to believe in this destiny, and I'm not saying that doesn't exist. What I'm saying is that we do know that there are certain factors that exist that help increase the likelihood that we're going to meet or interact with somebody and then ultimately form a relationship of whatever sort that relationship is. The first one is proximity. We have to see them. If we don't meet them, then we don't form a relationship with them. So it's pretty easy. So it's easier to form a relationship with people that we see. Frequency is one of those reasons too. You might hey, I've seen that person before. I think they go to my church, or they go to my grocery store, or they have a kid that's in my school. So that helps to open that door. A second one is familiarity. So the more often we see them, we start to develop not necessarily a sense of fondness, but a sense of relatability to them, a sense of recognition. And that makes it, as opposed to walking up to somebody that's completely strange to us, it's a little easier to walk up to somebody we've seen several times, maybe exchanged pleasantries with, or smiles, or recognize. And the third one is physical attractiveness. If the person is physically attractive, and that doesn't necessarily mean desirable. It could, but it can also just mean well-groomed. So they look like they take care of themselves. They look like somebody I would be open to approaching, as opposed to somebody who maybe doesn't come across that way. Mere exposure it is a big deal. Just simply being exposed to people makes it, I notice when I drop my child off to school, there's a lot of people in the parking lot. And by the end of the school year, we're like, hey, how you doing? Good morning. In the very beginning, it's not that you're staring them down or anything like that, but you don't know them, so you're just kind of focused on what you need to do, which is doing your job. And then as you see people over and over and over and over, we start to develop, and honestly I don't know their names. Maybe if I continued on that path I would or will, but just exposure. The same clerk at the grocery store, the same clerk at the post office, people that we see that we start to just be friendly with. The other thing is that we like people who like us. So particularly when somebody's in a service role where they are friendly to us, think of your favorite waitress if you go to a restaurant once a week for breakfast or whatever, and they're like, hey, Jack, Joe, whatever, how you doing? You know, I really like that color. Then if they're friendly to us, even if it's not real, but hopefully it is real, we like people who like us. So we become friendlier and feel closer to those people. When they throw you a compliment and they say you're awesome or you're great or something like that, we like them even more. So those are easier to develop relationships. And on the flip side, that helps you. If you're trying to develop a relationship with somebody or you'd like to get to know somebody, you know, there's nothing wrong with being pleasant to them so they feel that they are liked, you know, passing along a compliment, passing along just some pleasantries. Those things can go a long way in building a relationship and just making their day. There is what's called the matching hypothesis, which is out there. This is really, it's not just in romantic relationships, but primarily we see it in romantic relationships, which says that we are drawn to people of similar attractiveness. The same thing can be for friendships, because we tend to get with people that we think to be our peers. But the same in romantic relationships. So if we rate ourselves, I hate to say that, but like we all have an internal rating system. So if we say from 1 to 10, if I score myself like a 7, I mean, of course I'm a 10. I mean, we all know that. But if I scored myself a 7, I am joking. Just kidding. I don't score myself a 10. But if I scored myself a 7, then I would seek out other 7s. I wouldn't go out and seek somebody who was a 3. Unless there was something else going on in my life that would compel me to do so. I would want somebody that I thought was about the same attractiveness of me. If I saw myself as a 10, I would seek a 10. If I saw myself as a 3, I would seek a 3. Now, a 3 doesn't mean you can't get a 4 or a 5, but relatively, we just don't jump in huge numbers. We look for somebody we think is similar in attractiveness. And the theory even goes past that. Attractiveness is not just physical. Attractiveness could be that they have qualities that make them more attractive. So they're kind, they're funny, they're available, whatever those things are that make them attractive. Remember, attraction's a whole package, not just a look. Somebody may be really, really pretty, but not a very nice person. So they would not be as attractive. Reciprocal liking, I already addressed that. Simply stated, we like people who like us. And then some people say, well, what's the difference? You know, what is it more likely? Birds of a feather flock together, or do opposites attract? Well, both are true to some degree, but the more true, or the more likely to result in a healthy, longer-term relationship is birds of a feather flock together. Now, opposites attract is true. We may be attracted to somebody who has skills or qualities that we don't have, but in long-term relationships, they tend to cause a lot of conflict because we don't have enough in common that we can go through those obstacles together, so there tends to be a lot of conflict in those relationships. Now, for a short-term relationship, such as a project or a task, if that person brings qualities to the table that we don't have, that may be a great plus. So that may be an amazing thing. Or even somebody who comes into our lives reoccurring, just not all the time. So they have a specific role in each other's lives, then the opposites attract can be true. I don't need somebody who can do what I do. I need somebody who can do something different. But for long-term relationships, we tend to like people who have similar thinking to us, who have similar interests, who have similar skills and abilities, because we have more in common with them and we enjoy our time with them more. Friendships are very important, and they're important for many reasons. The social support aspect is really, really important in our lives. And friends are there to give us advice. They're there just to listen. They're there to counsel us. They're there to praise us, to tell us when we're doing great. So when we do something, we want somebody to recognize it. And we want to just talk and vent. We want somebody there to listen. And that's what friends are for. Those are not necessarily Facebook friends or associate friends. I mean, for some, they develop networks that way, but a close friend, somebody that I can really come to and say, I'm really excited, or I'm really nervous, or I'm really whatever, anxious, worried, happy. What having somebody that we feel is really listening and cares about us makes a big, big difference in our ability to cope and our well-being. People who have good friendship networks tend to be more positive, and they deal with stress better. So friends are really, really important. So friends help us sort through everything, and we feel better about ourselves, and we deal with our stress much better, which, as we've discussed in prior chapters, is a big, big part of helping us to be the best that we can be. There are three qualities that we see that would really define a friend when we talk about who's our friend versus somebody we know. The first one is that we have emotional disclosure, support, and a feeling of love with them, compassionate love. But we emotionally support each other, that we can disclose things to each other and not feel like they're going to share with the world, that I feel comfortable in sharing, and that we feel loved and supported by them. The second is that we have shared activities. So not only do they offer that, but we do things together. We do stuff, whatever that stuff is. And the third is that you enjoy that stuff that you do. So you do something and that you enjoy your time together, that you have fun. So you have a desire to be around that person. So those things are helpful. Moving on to love. We have different types of love as well. And as we talk about these types of love, I want you to understand these are theories. They're not absolute concrete. If it would be great if we could just put it in a computer and go, oh, that's my partner forever. That would be easy. And life's just not that easy. These are theories. However, these theories are not necessarily exclusive of one of another. So in a relationship, they could both be working at the same time in the same grouping. The book does address sexual orientation and love. It talks about homosexual and heterosexual relationships. For the purpose of this class, a different class might go into it in more detail, but for the purpose of this class, what you need to know is that essentially those relationships are the same. Obviously, there are some differences, but with regards to how we select partners and how we express affection, those type of things are the same. So when we talk about seeking love, feeling loved, those kind of things, they are essentially the same. While every relationship has its unique qualities, we wouldn't treat those relationships any different. So the first theory is called the triangle theory of love, and it basically says that there are three primary areas, as if you saw a triangle, right? So there's three areas in which the come together to form different types of love. And so at the top we would see intimacy or warmth or closeness. Then we would have passion, which is an intense feeling and a sexual desire. And the third one is a commitment, which is the desire to stay in that relationship and work through any troubles you might encounter. So those are the three corners: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And so those three corners can be alone or they can be in combination, creating different types of love, according to this theory. So there are 7 different groupings that you might see. One is liking, which is intimacy alone. I really like that person and I enjoy being with them. The second is companion love, which is intimacy and commitment. I'm committed to being with them, and we feel that closeness. And empty love, which is commitment only and doesn't have the other qualities. A fictitious love, which is passion and commitment. A infatuation, which is passion alone. Romantic love, which is intimacy and passion. And consummate love, which is, if we're lucky enough to get the one we all want, which holds all three qualities: intimacy, passion, and commitment. There are some other theories on, several other theories out there on relationships and love, but one that stands out and that your book addresses talks about some studies and some work that's been done on attachment style. So not just the love, but how do we attach? How do we get into those relationships, and how do we form that relationship, and what are the struggles we might go through them? And if you've taken your development class, which hopefully you have, you know we talked about attachment styles in that course, human growth and development, in that course as well. And so when we talk about it in that course, we're talking about it with babies and their attachment and how they attach and form relationships. Those attachment styles that are formed very young go all the way through our lives, into our peer relationships as children, and then into our intimate relationships as we get older. So unless something intervenes, meaning counseling or somebody helps us to develop a healthier style, then that style will persist throughout our lives and can grow if it's reinforced. Or if it cannot grow, and a healthier style can develop if that's supported. So that's the good news. If you happen to have an unhealthy attachment that came from birth when you didn't have control over it, it can be strengthened. So there's some hope in there. And so, as I'm sure you all remember from that Human Growth and Development course, there's 3 primary types of attachment we talk about, which is secure, avoidant, and anxious. And so in adults, we would see the same thing. We would see the secure relationship, which is easily goes into relationships, doesn't feel threatened. We all would like to be there. And about 55% of us are there. The other 45% of us are working on it. So the other one would be the avoidant relationship. So the avoidant's about 25% of the people, and here they have trouble with trust and getting close. It doesn't mean they can't, and with a understanding partner, they will get through that. And the more understanding and healthy relationships they have, the better they're going to get through and be able to move into a secure setting. So I'm very anxious. I've been hurt very hard, very badly, very avoidant. I'm afraid to go through that again. I'm scared, but this partner helped me through it, and now everything's okay. And again, that if you have that romantically, it can help us with friendships and stuff as well, because we don't feel that need to be afraid. In avoidant, anxious really talks more about the fear. Avoidant, I'm going to avoid it because that's how I'm going to solve the problem, and that will make it easier. Where the anxious, ambivalent relationship is a little bit different. The anxious ambivalent relationship does get into the relationship, but they're constantly worried about their partner, that the partner doesn't like them, that the partner is going to leave them. They're very, very insecure in that relationship. They have to check up on them all the time. They're constantly concerned about things that aren't concerning other people, and it preoccupies them. And that's about 20% of the people. So they're attached in a way that is, as you leave, call me when you get there, and call me in 5 minutes, and call me in 10 minutes, and what you didn't even call me all day. It's been like a half hour. If you attach that to somebody who's secure, they're going to see that as stressful, because why are you doing that? I went to the grocery store and then I came back, and so it can be very difficult. And so counseling or some friendships to help them through that and to build that security will make that relationship a lot easier, because if not, it stresses out the parties. So I think I told you the good news is we can develop a secure attachment. When we talk about breakups, I'm going to talk about breakups and then I'll join into the next video. There are several things that tend to lead, the prominent features that we see that lead to the most breakups. Of course, again, every relationship is individualized, so different things could happen that would create that. But we see 5 general areas where breakups happen. One is premature commitment. This is a whirlwind romance, and we commit to it, and we fall, this idea of falling head over heels from sight, so we get all involved, and then we find out about the person. So maybe they weren't who we thought they were. So we got involved a little bit too fast, and that causes it to break up. The second one is ineffective communication or ineffective conflict management skills. A relationship should not have conflict. I don't like double negatives, but we should have conflict in our relationships. Every relationship has some kind of conflict. The concern is not that a conflict happens. The concern is how do we communicate through that conflict, and how do we work with our partner through that conflict? Because whether it's we want to eat different foods or go different places, how do we resolve it so that both parties feel good about it at the end of the day, or open to it anyhow? The third, becoming bored with the relationship. The fourth is the availability of a more attractive relationship. And again, attractive is not just physical features. So I'm in this relationship, but I have to work 2 jobs and take care of all the household chores, and my partner's not doing anything. And this other partner comes up, and he's willing to share in responsibilities, and he has a job, and he's willing to contribute financially to the relationship. So that's more desirable. So they offer a better package, not necessarily that. They offer a better relationship deal. So is what we're looking for there. And the fifth is low level of satisfaction in a relationship. So we're simply just not happy. We got involved, and this relationship isn't meeting my needs. It's not making me feel excited every day to be in it, and so I'm going to dissolve it. So I'm going to take a break now. It's a good time. And then we will come back for the second part of Chapter 9. See you soon.